Live right here in San Antonio, Texas at Black Video Network. When we left off, we were talking about the whole problem that Black people are having. Well, I'm not going to call it our problem, it's their problem. They're having with our history. And I think Dr. Sharon wanted to ask Dr. Mateen a question along these lines.
You know, when you and I were talking, we were of like minds about how we really thought about DeSantis' decision. So, as Black parents, as Black educators, should we really be concerned about his decision, or should we be considering alternatives? In other words, is there another way to get to Walmart?
There are 10 different ways to get to Walmart. So whenever DeSantis, Governor Abbott, could be anybody. So if they're saying, well, we're not going to teach your history, fine. We can teach our own history. Mm-hmm. I don't know why we're so reliant on what used to be our open enemy. You know, you did everything you could to wipe us off the face of the earth. You did Tulsa, you did slavery, Jim Crow, you did all of these things. So now all of a sudden, you're trying to try this latest ploy. We're going to take away your history. It's like, fine, take it. Because what I learned about Black history, I didn't learn in school anyway.
That's right.
I was taught that through reading Jawanza Kunjufu and reading the autobiography of Malcolm X and reading Dr. King. That's how I learned it. Mm-hmm. So you can take it out the schools all you want. It was never in there to begin with. So, but again, I still have to say that they still offer U.S. history from 8th grade all the way up to high school. And you cannot teach U.S. history without teaching Black history. So you can take it out and all that. So we had this issue about the whole charter school movement and all that. And I used to be a staunch, I was against them, to be put it blunt, against charter schools. Now, as I've gotten older and started looking at things different, I'm like, there are so many options that our parents can have. When the charter movement started, it really started it was a community initiative. So we were supposed to have control of our schools in the community. That was how charter schools started. You're supposed to get a community of people together, go in your neighborhood and build a school that you want.
Right.
And the state of Texas and all these other states would fund it. That's how they started. We just chose not to do that. So we put all our eggs in our public school basket and realized that we weren't getting what we thought we should be getting. So when they're going there saying, teach us about ourselves, no, teach yourself about yourself. Other races do it all the time. So you teach yourself about yourself. How about that?
Go ahead.
This is where I come in.
Okay. This is where you're going to come in now?
Yeah, this is definitely where I come
Welcome.
in. Because my question is, yes, there is a place for us to talk about what history is taught about in school. But I want people to understand, I always ask, why are we continuing to ask for something from a people that's not going to give it to us?
That don't look like us.
Exactly.
We continue to ask, we want this, we want that. My theory has always been quit asking for stuff and let's create the stuff ourselves. When you first talked about a charter school and that there can be a charter school and that it was about communities, why isn't our community starting a charter school that teaches Blacks? And if that is the case, then why do we continually have to go out there and be against DeSantis and be against all those other folks? Nobody else is talking about that. It's only us that's talking about that.
Right.
We need to get to a point, in my opinion, where we become responsible for the stuff that we're doing as opposed to continuing asking somebody to give it to us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Totally.
You know, Reverend Howard Thurman, when the Chinese came over here and they met with him, and they asked him, you let another race of people educate your children? They said, that's unheard of. And when you think about it, that's what happened to us right out of slavery.
Right out of integration.
And out of slavery. Because as much as we talk about the independence of Black colleges, they were not independent. They were not independent because they had white folks giving them the money to run those schools. And so they had to jump to the tune. I know one of the Black colleges in Montgomery, around Montgomery, the president was irate when the college students in the 60s were going to protest because the white people said, don't let them. In fact, a number of college students got kicked out of school. And so what you're saying, Chris, is direct, is correct. But here's the question: What happens to public schools? I know we're getting off the subject, but this is right up your alley now. What happens to public schools if we go to all charter schools?
Public schools are not going to continue to exist, okay? They're
Say
not
that.
going
Say
to, I mean,
that.
you can
Say that
already,
again.
you can already see the writing on the wall. Public schools are not going to exist. It's going to charter schools and private schools. And once they get to private schools, they're allowing, in some places, for tax dollars to support private schools. So you're going to have elite people that go to private schools that also are going to be promoted, not promoted, but money to support those schools by tax dollars that, again, we can't go to.
I had calculated on the average daily attendance piece because every student in a seat costs X number of dollars a day. Okay, so I had figured out, looking at one district, based on a number of black students in the district, that if every black parent would pull those kids out on a Monday, for example, multiply it by whatever the average daily attendant amount would be for the day, it would be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and put those kids in kind of like a private school for a day where they would be learning African American history. Those districts will be hurting for that money.
It's true. But, and again, so when you're talking about charter schools, they don't necessarily have to be out of district charter schools. They can be in district charter schools. That's what the Young Men's Leadership Academy is. I wrote a charter to start a charter school within the school district. So you can write the charter and say, do whatever you want. You can have exemptions from attendance. You can have exemptions from this, exemptions for that. That's what all the other charters do. And the state of Texas will pay for it, or whatever state you're living in, they will fund that. So if you say, well, you know what, I don't like the fact that we have to go to school 6 hours a day. Well, in your charter, you can say, no, we're only going to go to school 4 hours a day, but we're going to go longer, or whatever the case may be. You have the autonomy to do that with an in-district charter. So again, but we just like to sit back sometimes and just let the school, your school district, your superintendent, your board of trustees, you like to sit back and let them tell you what's going on.
Happen.
And it doesn't become a problem until it becomes a problem. But as community members, as parents and all that stuff, we have a much stronger voice than we ever have used.
Okay. I actually want to ask though.
Go ahead.
I want to ask, so when you talk about in-district charter and the way it's funded, right? It's around what, $8,000 to $9,000 that the districts or the state allows per student, somewhere around there for charter students. Whereas I believe, what is it, Northside is, the state is funding them as what, about $23,000 per student?
Well, I don't know if it's 23,000. That would be that's high.
It's a richer student. It's a richer Northeast.
Yeah, more tax.
So whereas on some of the average, on some of the more affluent districts, it's about 17,000.
There you go.
Okay.
Right.
But in some of the wealthier district, it is up to about 23,000
I
per
believe
student.
it. I believe
and
it.
so, but even if you take the lower end of that and you contrast that 17,000 as opposed to 8,000 that they would give for in-district, I mean, is that something we have to guard against? Are kids going to miss out? And how much of that money are we going to miss when it comes to providing state-of-the-art equipment, iPads, computers, learning materials? I mean, are we going to, is it going to be a detriment to our students if we go that route?
And I hear you, and I'm going to say yes, a guarded yes. But where the charter schools fall short is that they don't have the things you talked about. They don't have state-of-the-art facilities. They don't have sports programs, all the sports programs. They don't have the AP courses. They don't have any of the things and that's where the kids that are sitting in charter schools now, that's what they're missing out on.
Right.
Because the charter schools that are in the neighborhoods now, they can't offer a swimming team. My daughter's on a powerlifting team. I didn't even know that was a thing. I went to a powerlifting meet the other day. They have a powerlifting coach and all that stuff, and she's in a neighborhood school. So, but when you go visit your ideas or your KIPS or places like that, they don't have, all they have is a room and a teacher and you sitting in front of them. They don't have any of the stuff that you actually need to make the whole experience a little bit better. They just don't have it because they don't have the money to do it. They want to do it, and that's why you said pretty soon public schools are going, all that money that's going to public schools will go to charter, and then they will have it because that's all they're lacking is the funding to do it.
Okay, let's go back to what you all were saying, that eventually public schools will be gone and it'll just be charter schools. Okay, I think we assume kids have to go to some school. So now that means all the kids will be going to charter schools. Now, will the charter schools then take on the same problem that public schools have?
Well, do they have to go to charters?
Well,
Can
you
start-
see if
can
they're
you-
doing away with public schools.
No, what I'm saying is there are other options other than, or we'll use the term charter, because if you're
Okay.
not public, you're charter. Under the umbrella of a charter. I don't want to go in the building every day. I'm scared. I don't want my child in the building every day. So there has to be some online. There has to be some remote type learning. I'm enrolled at Charter A or High School A, but I never go in the building. I
Right.
stay at home and get that asynchronous type learning. So you have to have those types of options. So the public schools, if there are no students in there, then of course the school will shut down, as we've seen in the neighborhood that this studio is located in.
Yeah.
You go around to these older neighborhoods in the Victoria courts and places like that. The children, those courts have been turned down. Wheatley courts, perfect example.
Yeah.
The Wheatley courts right here on the east side of San Antonio used to be one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. The Wheatley courts. Well, Barack Obama, under the Promise Zone, came in and gave the city all this money, and he wanted to get rid of what he called concentrated poverty, which I write about in the book.
Yeah.
He wanted to get rid of what he called concentrated poverty. So no more ghettos, no more Cabrini Green, no more Wheatley courts, no more East Terrace. Got rid of all of that. So when you get rid of the Wheatley courts, all the kids that were in there are no longer feeding into Wheatley Middle School. That means Wheatley Middle School closes down. So all the residents moved out, they tore up down the courts, and they started rebuilding what we have now in this multi-income housing. But unfortunately, those kids and families that moved out,
Can't
none of them
afford it.
came back. So that's how I was able to get the building to start the Young Men's Leadership Academy, because there were no kids over there. It's not even in an attendance zone anymore. It's one thing you can do also with a charter, in-district charter. Your attendance zone free. You can recruit anywhere you want to recruit when you have an in-district charter. So we can do the things you're talking about. We just have to have the vision to do it, to want to do it.
Let me answer Fred's your question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, because even with the preface of what I said earlier, okay, you're still going to be at the same position that you are in. If you say that you get rid of all the public schools,
Right.
and now you got charter schools, if we as blacks don't do something ourselves, we're still going to be at the same issue with charter schools and we are now with public schools. The situation does not change. And really, when you look at it, it's us that has to change,
Right.
not somebody else.
Because the charter schools can have certain criteria. For example, the charter say that you have to learn Hebrew. Well, that may eliminate a bunch of kids families who may not see a need for that. So the charters can be designed to actually segregate itself from certain groups of students.
We have
And that's my concern when you start talking about charter is, again, you have to be on the guard against 21st century structural racism. And that's one of the ways that they can do it. And the other question is, where is all this magic money going to come from to fund a school where they get the equivalent education as a charter school in Alamo Heights would get?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So those are my concerns and questions when we start talking about charter. You understand? And so one of the things is taking the system that we have in place right now and making that system accountable, making that better. And that's what we start talking about structural racism. We start talking about another thing that DeSantis is against, which is the 1619 project.
Well,
And start.
there are some things about that.
Well,
that you
I mean,
can question.
basically, when we talk about 1619 project, just to let everybody know, we're talking about reframing the way we look at American history. That's it in a nutshell. We're going to look at American history and our contributions to American history based on those first 20 slaves that arrived. And so we're reframing the way we look at American history. What are our contributions? What are our cultural contributions, our economic contributions? That's it. That's what that project is about, and they're against that.
Okay, that's
Let's
good.
go.
Okay, you're reframing history,
No, the way we look at history.
the same thing. Okay, same thing. Okay, the way you look at history, you're reframing it to be looked at that way.
It's-
Now, I've read part of that book, and some of the things they're saying really question the founding of this country and blacks' involvement. I'm a white dad,
Okay.
And I want history framed to make it look good for me
Of course.
and for my kids. And so, isn't that what they have been doing all these years? And now all of a sudden, we're saying,
right.
hey, we're going to reframe this. We don't want your kids to look at this
No.
way. What's going to be my response?
What we're saying is we've always looked at it from your lens, right? And this is.
I'm not arguing with that.
But what if we look at it from a different lens?
But they don't want that.
I know that. That's the problem.
That's the
That's why
problem.
they're against it, because their ego won't allow it.
You want it to be looked at a certain way. A white dad wants it to be looked at a certain way. Where's the medium?
Because history is not going to change. It doesn't. The perspective from which you examine it is what changes, but the history itself doesn't change.
No, it
but
doesn't.
if we're always looking at history from the perspective of the conqueror, of the people who are in charge, of the racists, then that's what we're going to get, and those are the policies that we're going to get. That's that, and it's going to perpetuate the same policies because we're always looking at things the same way. This is my thing: is that they are opposed to this, because one, it's they have this idea of America. Right, their idea of America, and that they did it alone, and that this is a white Christian nation, which has never been, but they wanted to, put forward like it has always been, right? And so when you examine America and examine what they put forward to the world, all of us have been to DC, right? We've all seen the statues, we've all seen the monuments, we've all seen the paintings, we've all seen everything, the friezes, all the iconography that they put forward, right? This idea of America.
It's almost as if you look at the Alamo, there's almost three mindsets that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at the Alamo, a la, how we've seen it in the movie. But if you look, John Wayne, but you can always look at the black perspective of the Alamo was in fact like a plantation in a way, okay? Or you can look at it from the Hispanic perspective as well. So you got three different lenses on just the Alamo itself. Now, which version do we see always getting put in the history book?
Right.
We get the John Wayne version in the history book.
Yeah. Well, it's like
To
you
them.
said,
To them.
the conquerors write the history
Right.
books.
They want to put forward Jefferson. They want to put forward Washington. They want to put forward Adams and Lincoln, and these are the people they want to put forward, right? So they want to tell the story of Jefferson without hemmings. They want to tell the story of Andrew Jackson, but they don't want to tell the story of Andrew Jackson, the person who committed all the genocide. And so this is the image that they want to put forward. The problem with that is they want to write what they've always done is write black people out of history and out of our historical contributions to this nation.
See, you ever remember? I remember the first time I saw Black history in my textbook was around fourth grade. Went to that chapter, saw that image of the bottom of the belly of the ship, and you had the slaves in there. That was my Black history.
Well, in a way, that I know it sounds strange. That was progress, because when I was in fourth grade, you got nothing, absolutely nothing. Like we didn't exist in the history books.
But you look at it as progress, and it really is forming an indelible impression upon your brain as to what you see and how the perception of what they want you to see is given to you.
So we go back to that slave ship image that we've all seen. So what if we expand it a little bit more and we start talking about the revolts that happened on those ships?
They won't talk about
They won't
that.
talk
No.
about that.
Yeah.
They're trying to write us completely out of history.
Right.
There's nothing. If you go to DC, the only thing that they have to commemorate the black folks who built it is in the corner of Emancipation Hall. There's a rock and a plaque that says that this building was built by enslaved folks. That's it.
Yeah.
And we built the Capitol, and we built the White House. And it was what, L'Enfant that designed it, but walked away when he was fired by Washington. And it was who, Banneker, that turned around and recreated it by memory.
Yeah.
Where's that? Where's
Have you been
that?
to Frederick Douglass's house?
Yes,
Yes, I have.
yes.
That's another thing. I'm saying,
Yeah.
why is this off the beaten path in
Right.
Anacostia? It's his actual house.
Yeah.
That he
Beautiful
lived in,
home.
that they've kept restored over all these years. It's beautiful. Can you imagine? That house today is probably $5 million house. It's a huge house.
Yeah,
Imagine when he bought it way back when,
Yeah.
and escaping from Maryland to walk all the way to D.C. and get there and become what he became and built this house. That where he died is still right there. His picture, the book he was reading, 12 Years a Slave, it's still sitting right there to this very day. I said, why isn't this talked about more when it comes to the history of Washington D.C.?
Right.
Frederick Douglass' home on Cherry Hill, right? It's beautiful.
I know, I've been there.
We're talking about critical race theory. We're talking about what DeSantis is proposing or whatever. But why do I feel like it's a broken record that we don't want to take responsibility to figure out how we do for ourselves? We talk about they want to do this to us, okay? We are always the victim. Yeah, we were victims, okay? But until we decide to do something for ourselves, we continue to be at this table talking about this discussion over and over and over again.
Hold that point. We'll come back. We'll do our third segment on that point. We'll start right there. Okay? Okay, we'll be right back with you here at Contemporary Black Voices in San Antonio, Texas.